I was living in one of the most beautiful places in South Africa, always being outdoors, surfing, skating, living it up every second we got, only for it to all be taken away from me in a second.
Ross was hit by a car while he was riding his motorbike, and he sustained a fracture of his left hip. That is a major fracture and it is very painful. The hip is completely disconnected, and Ross had a lot of pain as a result of it. And it's very rare in younger people. You have to have a high energy impact to have it in a young person like him.
The witness on scene, I was the first person he called, saying Ross had been in an accident, and my heart just sunk to my stomach. It was the most awful thing to hear, and all I could hear in the background was just Ross screaming. And the guy kept reassuring me he was okay, he had just hurt his leg, Obviously we didn't know the extent of it at that point.
It all feels so real to me. I remember after the car hit me, trying to get up, but my leg just fell up from underneath me. I tried to pull myself out of the road. All I was thinking was like, Flip, I need to get up the road. You know, I heard people shouting, and then someone came over. While I was talking to the guy that came over to help me, I remember looking at the sky, seeing blue skies, but yeah, my face was getting wet through my helmet. It was quite a crazy feeling, but I suppose, you know, like all that adrenaline just takes over.
I'm waiting in the hospital to see him for the first time. Lying there, he had a brace around his neck. I saw him and I just broke down. It was heartbreaking to see him like that.
One of the hardest things for me was going from being a very active person, being able to do everything and being super independent, to having it all taken away from me, not even being able to get out of bed by myself. I think this was possibly one of the hardest mental challenges I think I've ever been through.
Whenever Ross needed something, it was kind of make sure that somebody was available to help him. Especially when he was on the bed, it was really difficult and probably very frustrating for him as well. I had to lift his leg up, pull him off the bed to get his crutches to him so he could assist himself up.
For me, I think it was the small wins that kept me going. I remember the morning when I got out of bed and got to the couch all by myself. That was one of the best feelings ever. It was a challenge that I never in a million years thought I'd have to face, learning to walk again. It was hard. It was fucking hard. I felt like, you know, running was never really on the cards. I remember saying to Jana, if I can ever run, I swear I'm gonna do the UTCT.
One thing that I do remember quite vividly was sitting in the room and the hospital physio came to see him, and it was like, all right, time to get you walking, and they were like, we need to get you up, we need to get you going. And being a biokineticist, I kind of understood the process, but to see him being in so much pain, he just went completely pale when he stood up. Obviously all that pressure onto that leg, couldn't even imagine the amount of pain that he had been in. But he did really well. He walked up and down the passage and then back in.
The rehab was really intense. I was pushing myself to the max, and you'll be surprised at some of the internal conversations you have with yourself when you're at that point of failure. You know, it was tough, really tough. Some days it felt like, I was never gonna get there. And every time I felt like I was making headway, I hit another challenge.
In Ross's case, it took me about 6 months to getting back to where he wanted to be, to running and to being able to carry on daily activities. Obviously, there was a hiccup or two in his rehab as well. So I think that's actually the main reason why Ross came to see me, is because in this rehab he developed a patellofemoral joint syndrome, and there wasn't enough baseline level strength built up again, and he also still had a couple of movement dysfunctions. But it likely occurred as a result of the faulty movement patterns that he developed as a result of being on crutches, learning to walk again, learning to load bear, and then you develop all these compensations. His rehabilitation really started with me correcting recruitment issues. So he was using incorrect muscles to do certain functions. And then after we got that all settled, that was probably about, I'd say, 6 to 8 weeks that we focused on that. And then after that, we initiated the aggressive strength training. And all during this, we did specific knee or patellofemoral joint rehab as well. So it was a bit of a hitting it from both sides. Once the knee was in a good place in terms of pain-free under heavy loading, then we could go into what we call landing mechanics. We progressed that into teaching his body and basically his leg system what it feels like again to take impact. And we'd actually make him hit the ground quite hard with his feet so that it would get used to taking load through the system. And then after that, we initiated him on a return to running, which, if you happen to ask him about, is not very fun in the initial stages, because it's very simple, like walk 100 meters, jog 100 meters, and then building up from that.
The build-up to the race has been a very interesting time. It's been a lot of ups and downs with all the training. It's a big mental challenge, especially some of the training days have been very, very difficult. I think that the mind is a strong thing. Going through this, just coming out of the rehab was a very challenging space in itself, But, having the luxury of being able to run where I wasn't for so long, I couldn't even walk. So coming back to run, the mental game is just, having the opportunity to do it. Nothing's going to stop me from stopping running, because I've now got the opportunity to run where I never before. So I think that's what's motivating me to keep going.
And also living in Stellenbosch was a blessing as well. We had just got the cutest little puppy named Oatly, and he was kind of a driving force for Ross during this period. He'd always take him up Kutsenberg Mountains. They'd go trail running for kilometers on end, and it really helped push him during those final months.
So some of the benefits that this whole process will bring in for him is particularly would be improving his running economy. And then also just the fact that we've given him utilization of his hip muscles gives him a lot more power for climbing. Another major benefit that I think he'll get from the program is because we've worked so much on his distal quadricep control, that impact that he gets running downhill will now be carried in the quadriceps and not on the knee joint itself. So I think pain-wise and economy-wise, it's just going to be much better.
Driving in, looking at the mountain and obviously how steep it was pretty nerve-wracking. I guess it made it a bit more real. But I guess the goal of it is just to have fun and do the best I can.
next 23k hero comes to UTC.
There he goes, takes the basic glasses, 1 up to 55.
That's fucking hard, bro.
Well, I'm making.
Yeah, so on the way down, it was so much easier because it was just like, I can see the aim. No, I tied. I tied.
The atmosphere when Russ was coming into the finish line was infectious. People were screaming and cheering him on. They had just mentioned his name. Cowbells going off. Like they didn't know what he had gone through to get to this point. So seeing him do that, what he had set out to achieve, was, I couldn't have wished for anything more for him.
Achieving this, I think, was probably one of the most amazing feelings. It was a journey, like a huge mental note, and trust me, many internal conversations. But I think, what I've learned through this whole process is nothing is impossible. Even when you think there's no way out, there is. You just have to keep pushing, keep believing in yourself, and you'll get there. I think my hope from sharing my story is that it inspires someone that's going through a tough time, to know that it's possible, they can do it, and you just need to keep your mind strong, lean on that support system around you, and count those small wins, because those are the ones that matter.